Hey guys, it's an election season. St. George City elections are the most important thing. We want you to go to votestg.com and find out who's running and what they stand for. See us all over Southern Utah in our voter information booth. We'll be at Digby's Market, Red Rock Bicycles, and the park. We'll see you out there. Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. We got another In the Running candidate, the 435 podcast. Thanks for tuning in. We got Kimball Willard here. Real quick, hit him with your website.
elect.kimbellwillard.com.
elect.kimbellwillard.com. He's running for the St. George City Council. We talked a lot about what's really important to him, what he thinks is important to the city. We talked about budgeting. We talked about getting the government out of the way of individual business rights and property rights. He's an advocate for the citizens of St. George. He wants your vote. Definitely enjoy this episode. We hope you enjoy it. Go to votestg.com to find out more information about all the candidates that are running. Your ballots should be in the mail. September 5th is the day that the ballots have got to be placed in. Go to the Dixie Center to go drop yours off. It's probably the best location to do it. Obviously, if you're voting by mail, get it in early. You definitely want to get it in and get it counted.
If you drop it off day of, drop it off before 8 p.m.
Before 8 p.m., yeah, definitely avoid. And it's easy. You just drop it in the thing. It takes a second. Good to go. But hope you enjoyed the episode. We'll see you out there, guys. Kimball, dude, thanks for coming on here. Yeah. I was wildly impressed with your 2 minutes. You took the best 2 minutes out of everybody in that forum, his candidate forum, Utah Tech. So you definitely you're coming prepared on the written side. How do you feel like, because ballots are in the mail? This is a little bit of later interview. We're hoping people can get some information about you. But tell if they haven't heard about you, let's hear a little bit about your campaign. Like why? What are the fundamentals? Why are you running? What's important to you in this specific St. George City?
Well, why I'm running is very different than most people.
Okay.
In the last year, I've spoken several times in front of City Council. I'm going to pitch my website here, elect.kimbellwillard.com, because in the media section, I've clipped out when I've spoken in front of City Council. Most of that has been about the budget, especially when they tried to raise taxes last year. Mm-hmm. But because of speaking those several times in front of City Council, citizens actually approached me asking me to run.
Yeah.
And I held off for a long time committing to it because I've been getting more involved with the Republican Party, the Washington County Republican Party here. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want to spread myself too thin.
Yeah.
And a mutual friend who'd really been on my case, or one of my friends who's really been on my case about running, a mutual friend had been talking about running and said, he's a great conservative. Let him take that reign. I'm good to go over here. Mm-hmm. Got more involved with the Republican Party, and then the mutual friend decided he's not going to run this year. He'll look at it in the future. And my friend was really pounding on me then to run. And I come from a spiritual-based family, and after spiritually searching whether this is the correct path, my wife and I felt very strongly that I was supposed to run.
Yeah. So now you're in it. It sounds like the budget is going to be a key driver. Now it is for quite a few of the candidates. We've talked a little bit. Had a couple interactions on Facebook just recently, just about the budget, and I'm really interested because I've had a hard time getting people to pin down, hey, where is their waste? Because I can't disagree, especially when you just looked at it at its face value. It seems like there's a lot of money being spent on a lot of things. And are we being a steward of the money that we're collecting from the citizens?
And that's my biggest concern. I mean, when they spend $800,000 on a park bathroom, this isn't San Francisco. There's no excuse for it to be that high. And that's what on the interaction there, I can't give you specifics of where the waste is because we only get a general view. Even on that 100-page summary of the budget, we don't see line by line. And
the only way you can do it is if you go to every single city council meeting and they go.
Even then they don't present the line by line.
Well, they in the budget, but in the approvals of those what they spend those monies on, right? You're getting it in real time because you get the pre-plan. Hey, this is how much money we can spend, and then every city council meeting, they say, hey, we're going to approve this spending, right? So it was interesting. Yesterday, they tabled the $3 million allocated money expenditures, which I thought was applicable considering we're coming up on election. I figured they wouldn't all want to be saying, I want to spend, because I think it was north of $3 million in allocations on some of those things. So
But even beyond that, if I get on city council, I want to see line by line, what are you purchasing with this? Is there a better route to go?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying buy the cheapest stuff out there. I'm a big believer in buying the most cost effective, whatever it happens to be. You go cheapest, it's going to fall apart on you. You get the most expensive, you're paying for a name. There's a middle ground. I found this 95% of the time that it costs more than the cheapest and is going to give you the best longevity for whatever that product is, whether it's a service or an actual item, and make sure that we're focusing on wisely where we're actually spending the money, what we're actually purchasing.
So to that point, right? So you pull up the bathrooms. You brought that up. Sandtown Park is what I'm guessing you talked about. And I think it was like just north of 600,000. I think it was like 670. The only reason I think I know that is because I circled it on the because I thought the same thing. I was like, $600,000 for a bathroom. What the heck? Why don't we just remodel the bathrooms already there? To that point, right? Going through, each one of these things, this is how the budgets do get out of control, right? So I appreciate you bringing that up. Aside from the budget and your belief that we can be better stewards of it, what else? What else within that management system that you feel like you can impact?
Really big issue for me because I've lived here for over 30 years. And anybody who says that the Goodelboy network does not exist either is unaware of it, or part of it, or just completely choosing to be blind to it. The Goodelboy network is the old families, the old money. And when we first moved here in the late 80s, they controlled everything. And during the 90s, especially the last half of the 90s into the 2000s, you really saw them losing a lot of power. I was on the early front of families moving from California. And after that, the damn Californians started moving in. I mean, that's exactly the phrase I kept hearing. But what you saw was a lot of that good old boy power being diluted as there was more people involved, getting involved in the city on politics.
And then families selling off land, and there's, 25 different siblings or whatever it might be to divide up some of that.
Over the last 10 years, the current administration has doubled down on that. And what comes out of that is you get selective enforcement of the codes. I talked about this on my website, on my blog a few weeks ago. One of my friends who owns a business here in town got code enforced for having those big teardrop flags in front of his business. Turns out there's a code right now in Section 3 under businesses on the signs section that any flag that flutters is not allowed. That actually says signs that flutter. Okay. Well, if you read further down in there, you can get a code variance if you go before the signboard, because you see those signs all over St. George, especially up and down Sunset. So I, on his behalf,
all the like inflatable guys that are like,
that includes as part of it.
Yeah.
And so I went down to the in front of to the city to see, okay, how do we get on the signboard? How do we do this correctly? Turns out the signboard doesn't exist anymore. They haven't updated the codes. But then I came to the realization that even if the signboard still existed, the fact that they can choose who gets those variances means that my 14th Amendment rights to due process under the law are being completely violated. And the fact that I can't get a variance now, that's just a double down on that violation. It's this kind of thought process. Plus, my friend's business has had code enforcement almost militarized against them because of people in the administration that don't want them to build their business. And they've had to fight code enforcement time and time and time again.
Same thing happens. Open house signs. There is no clarity on where we're allowed to put open house signs. When we're allowed.
I know you're a realtor. This. I don't know if you're aware of this on the whole flag part of it. There's a complete section that completely from minute one is a built-in variance for any development selling new land. You can have flags up there. So that's why you see like S&S Homes. I'm not bashing on them, but they happen to have a development that's been going on for several years near my house. Their flags look like hell.
They're all tattered.
But they're legal. Because they still have lots that are new to sell.
Right. So this brings up the point is this antiquated coding system, which it permeates several different aspects, right? It's not just business codes, but it's also zoning code violations or zoning code
There's
issues.
been people in authority over the years that have used the mayor role and the city council role to benefit their businesses. It's way too common in America, but I really want to clean a lot of that stuff out. I mean, Mayor MacArthur, he did fantastic work here. He really loved the city, but he also put in codes that benefited his businesses.
Fair enough. So if that's true, because I couldn't necessarily state one side or another whether there's a specific code that does, because I actually don't even know what business he was in.
He owned MacArthur Welding, but aside from that, he built an RV park here in town. And as soon as that RV park went in, he had the codes changed so that the impact fees for new RV parks I believe went up 5 times, which is why no new RV parks were built until this last year.
Interesting. Okay. So that being the case, you're definitely anti-establishment, right?
Oh, yeah.
Let's kind of lay that down. Well, let's keep going though.
Well, just the fact that because of funding issues that I had and my sign maker screwing things up, I'm really coming out of left field as a
out of obscurity.
I mean, that was what was funny at the forum. I had people come up to me afterwards. I had no idea who you were, but I'm loving this.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And so I really am behind the 8 ball, but at the same time, I think there's an opportunity there to get more engagement with, because my signs showed up yesterday. I'm putting up literally last night and today, the big signs. And I'm really hoping that gets people curious, at least to investigate further on the candidates that are running.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about this idea with the third party audit of the budget because are you suggesting they audit just the budget itself or just in general the management of the city?
The management. Okay. Because the accountants, I mean, they've gotten these awards.
Because I think I'm getting confused on the two different things and we kind of were in that conversation, but I want you to maybe help me get clarity.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not calling out the accountants at all. I mean, they get awards for what they do. They do a fantastic job. I'm calling out the business logic, the business mechanisms, the choices of where the city is choosing to spend money. It's way upstream from the accounting side.
Do you think it's possible that it could just be a lack of choices, right? So it's like, hey, we do a bid for bathrooms and then the lowest bid's $800,000. That's what we get, right? Do we just, they would say, so we're just not going to put a bathroom there and it's something needed. Do you think it's a political will issue? Do you think it's a lack of options? Maybe they're getting...
I personally can't say it's a lack of options. It isn't. I tend to doubt it is, but I also believe that there is some politics involved there with current administration using their pressure to keep people who would otherwise put bids in, to keep them from putting bids in, to push them towards people they want that will make that money.
Okay.
Because I've seen that in the city before.
Okay, fair enough. So then the management audit. Let's get back to that. I'm sorry, I cut you off. So,
but just auditing the actual processes. I worked at the college the last half of the 90s, and our department was having to create our own processes. At first, I worked for the Dixie Center. I was the head tech for the Cox Auditorium and Burns Arena the last half of the 90s. When I started there, that was the Dixie Center while they were building the current facility, with the understanding that my job was specifically there for the theater and support on the arena because they weren't building a new theater. Great. College comes in. They hire me to continue to do the same job. And we basically had to build up the processes for that facility for renting that out and running the shows there. And I borrowed a lot from what we had done before at the Dixie Center. But as I got to know the other departments, you realize, especially any kind of government entity that's been around for a while will have these antiquated systems that no one dares to question because that's the way it's always been done.
Yeah.
And we got to be willing to question, is this the most efficient way to get this done? Is this the most efficient way money-wise to get this done? And try and streamline a lot of these processes and cut out the pork and cut out the waste.
Yeah. That's a good point. Okay, so then thinking about what are these other, big issue items. Okay, so we talked a little bit and we kind of beat up or went into the budget quite a bit. What else do you have in terms of what you're trying to clean up? Well, are you for the GO bond or
no?
No, you're not.
Okay.
I'm also still on the fence. I can't say yes or no just because I have a hard time.
This is why I didn't answer that survey, because that survey was yes or no and doesn't get into the nuance. The reason of the why. I'm not against parks. I love our parks. They are fantastic. But look last year at when they tried to increase the tax and the city intentionally underfunded safety, specifically to make the citizens have this narrative that if you are not for this tax increase, you are not for safety. That's how it was being pitched. It was a complete psychological ploy, which we called them out on it. But they still committed to the 5-year growth plan. And as I investigated further, the increase in pay for the safety departments, which was grossly needed. They were way underpaid, and I totally get that. But they kept saying, we can't do this without the tax. Tax gets shut down, and lo and behold, by the end of that calendar year, they figured out how to pay for it. So now they're telling us that if we don't go for this GO bond, We don't renew the bond. So it doesn't actually increase our taxes, but if we don't renew it, our taxes go down. So it's a continuation of the tax. Mm-hmm. They're saying if we don't do this, we can't maintain our parks. We can't build a ton of other parks. Yeah.
Because I think maintenance is we got to separate maintenance because I think there's been a couple of clarity issues there. The geo bond is not it's not allowed to maintain. Now they can upgrade, like build a new swing set, for example. Like there was a swing set there now, and now they're going to take that swing set out and put a new swing set in, right? So I think there's some maintenance piece in there, but you're just upgrading the equipment. But as far as like being able to,
the biggest reason I'm against the geo bond, honestly, is these upgrades will be nice. Are they really necessary? But the big thing is on the new parks. Do we need new parks? Well, over at Desert Edge, they need a new park. There's no place for the kids to go there. I learned this while I was canvassing. Mm-hmm. They need a park out there. Mm-hmm. The other parks I question greatly because in those projections, they don't talk about 10 years down the road, the maintenance costs that are continued on that will continue to have to be paid for by the taxpayer. But at the same time, we're being told that we're in a drought and we don't have enough water, but you're adding in more parks. Now, again, I'm not against parks, but of the parks we have right now, what percentage of the time of the year do they sit empty?
Yeah, that'd be hard to tell.
There comes a point when's enough parks? And that discussion, I don't think has happened. I think it's been this mindset, they're building new houses, we have to build new parks. In fact, I remember, I think it was 4 years ago, an incumbent was running to keep her seat on the city council, and her whole pitch was, well, I was on city council, no citizen was farther away than 1.5 miles from a park. You're assuming that's a good thing.
Yeah.
I'm not saying complete urbanization.
I think it's a good thing I got little kids. I'm like, where's the parks at? I need to, and then we go on the park tour, right? But there's a lot of great parks. And to your point, maybe when do we say we got enough?
I mean, personally, I like to see, since so many of these housing developments that go in with the plans of having an HOA. My neighborhood that I bought into 4.5 years ago, I'd been there for quite a while. They had a park with an HOA. Before I moved in, the HOA had given the park and all the green spaces over to the city. Yep. They used to have their own splash pad. They pulled the splash pad out, put in a volleyball court because there was another splash pad a mile away. I would like to see a standardization that encourage developments to put in parks if they're going to have an HOA, with understanding that you own that park HOA. We're not taking it over.
Yeah. Well, and I think with the developers, because a lot of times it's a requirement that there is some amenity. Mm-hmm. So depending on the size of the development, it's a requirement they have to have some kind of an amenity, right? And what that amenity is.
And the unsaid understanding is that at some point the city's going to take it over, and I think that needs to stop.
And I think they call it as we donate it back to the city, which is interesting because it's like, well, the upfront cost isn't to the city, and now all the city has to do is maintain it. So it allows the city to gain a park without having to spend an upfront cost in the infrastructure piece of whatever that amenity is, right? So that being said, but that also drives the cost of those developments to go up, and that's how the development market's going to work, is that if it's too expensive to do it, they won't do it. Or they'll build really massive, really expensive houses, which ends up getting us into a similar predicament we're in right now, where housing affordability is a serious issue.
Or like my parents.
St. George City, though, I would say this just before I get too far, is St. George City, as far as doing what they can is higher density across the county, they've done a pretty dang good job over the years of finding places to add multifamily.
Yeah, they're getting a lot
but
better.
They could do way more.
Oh, yeah.
Way more. And same with every other city in the county as well.
But here's part of the balancing act that it's an interesting point to bring up. My parents live out in the fields across the street. When they built the house, was unincorporated Washington County. Their side of the street is St. George. Mm-hmm. And when they bought in out there, it was old farm fields. They bought 2.5 acres, and they were promised that this area is 1 acre minimum lots. And then as it went closer to the city in incremental steps, the lot sizes would get smaller. Mm-hmm. Well, a gentleman who used to be on Washington County Commission had bought some land across the street perpendicular, still in St. George, to my parents' place, a couple acres there. And he held on to it for several years until he was off the council, and then went and got a zone variance for his plot, which is across the street from those 1 acre promised minimum lots, mm-hmm. to get his cordon for 30 acre lots so he could subdevelop it put in small, more houses, make more money. And part of that initial agreement with the city was at the end of the street, it would be a cul-de-sac. They would have a general area that would have stables because it's semi-agricultural. Well, I'm tempted to use a Bidenism there. Wouldn't you know when the development went in, it's just a through street. There's no amenity at all. No cul-de-sac. It goes straight down to 3,000. This is the buddy crap that I've been talking about, that I've been yelling about, is the fact that this crap's got to stop. If you're going to require these amenities, require the amenities. If you're going to make these promises to the citizens on your zoning, stick to it.
Well, I think that goes to a larger point too, is that the promises of the zoning requires a vision that goes long term, and then that general plan is supposed to dictate, the sub zones that are within that general plan, right? You get these, you get a macro view, and then you get micro as you get a little bit closer into it. But the problem is that they allow so many changes to these things. They allow so many. But then at the same time, I would say for the better part of 20 years, the vast majority of the land was just single family R110 zoning, right? So you put this really wide open blanket zoning that's like, hey, we just need residential housing and that's it. That's a huge problem. It's why we have traffic. It's why we have housing affordability issues. It's why we have a lot of problems. So, it's a lack of long-term planning that has gotten us into this mess, in my opinion.
And it was also combined with, especially 15, 20 years ago, we've got to control our growth to keep it at 3.4% for the water. That's what the Water Conservancy District says. But the thought process 10, 15, 20 years ago was you had the developers that were trying to make money, trying to make a living, want to build houses, and you had a lot of older families that didn't want to see St. George grow. And that conflict still exists to some degree. But because of that conflict, the zoning was not forward thinking at all because they didn't want to have high density housing. And we're at a point now we need to have it.
We got to have it. We needed to have it back then.
Yeah.
We needed to have it back then. We got to be able to see, down the road and holding on and to the water point, that is the only argument in my mind to limiting the development at some capacity, right? But I think there's a lot of arguments to be made is the higher density that you get, the municipal and industrial water usage, it goes down per capita as you add higher density. You have smaller spaces, people use less water. You have these single family quarter acre lots, people use the water to landscape their lawns or whatever.
Even like a townhouse complex. Well, you've just cut out 3/4 of what you would use it for grass.
Exactly. And whether it's grass or whether it's agricultural, there's a lot of benefits, but then there's actually a lot of reuse systems that you can put into these things that now allow that you have this higher density, but the water that's being used in this concrete pad that you've created now can get into a reuse system, right? So the capture rate of it goes up the higher density that you go. So you have this ability to reuse. If you look at Vegas, they ran out of water 20 years ago, right? And they just keep growing, right? Yeah. And so to the point with, hey, we got to keep into this certain growth stage, that's using history as the example. And then that's assuming that our agricultural water usage is going to continue to dump water on alfalfa, which is a totally different separate conversation. But, I would say that we're losing the forest for the trees in a lot of ways on this development and a lack of plan. And I had Mayor Randall in here and she specifically talked about, the downtown 20-year plan was like pulling teeth. And we haven't even started on the 20-year plan for the rest of the city, right? It's outside of the downtown plan, and it expired in 2020. So we're 3 years in, almost 4 years into this thing, and we still don't have a vision for where St. George's City is going to go. What do you see for the vision? What do you think should happen with that plan? Should there be a consultant company come in to help us figure out how to manage the amount of growth, or do you feel like it can happen within just the local population?
It can happen with the local population if people are willing to come in and have real honest discussions. Like one of the major plans with that plan they paid for, if you look at the final development on that, and they cut down a main street and make it into a big walking plaza area, very pretty. You've now cut off all of your retirees that have mobility issues from getting to any of those businesses.
Okay.
Because you can't park up there.
Okay.
You can't drive up there. And there's some forethought there that I think fails in that particular plan. But I think that people need to, we need to get the citizens involved to have real conversations of it. This is where we are right now in St. George. We have growth coming in. We only have so much sprawl that we can really support here.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you, as a citizen, see the best use of going to high capacity development areas?
Mm-hmm.
I like the concept that the city is going for of putting in higher concentration within the main city centers, because then transportation becomes easier, food services become easier, all that becomes easier.
Mm-hmm.
One of the dangers here, just because of the world that we live in now, is this fear that they're trying to convert downtown into the 15-minute city. And there's a whole discussion area there, especially with the conspiracy theorists. Mm. But these are the discussions we got to be willing to have.
Yeah.
To see what the real goal is, what the real plan is, and what the city will accept. Because if you just force it on the citizens, aside from the money that you're paying a consultant, and a consultant is just someone who knows how to make a big bill. There are experts there, but a lot of them are just in it to cash a big bill. But if you force it on the citizens, this is what we're going to do because this expert says is right, and we paid him money, mm-hmm. you lose the support of the citizens. Mm-hmm. And that's where the resistance comes from. That's where most of this resistance in the city is right now, because of choices that are being forced on the citizens without the citizens involved, and in some ways the citizens' voice being removed from the conversation.
Yeah, tell me about that. What's your thought on that? Do you feel like what should have happened with public comment?
Well, at the least, Mayor Randall shouldn't have walked out of the room. That was inappropriate. There are free speech advocates that says that's a violation of free speech. I should be able to talk anytime, but these meetings still have to have decorum. They still have to have have a rule of flow. But what she did there actually wasn't so much a violation of free speech clause within the First Amendment. It was a violation of tradition within the city for an opportunity to give my grievances, which mm-hmm. is also part of the First Amendment. Mm. I felt that was totally inappropriate.
Yeah. Well, I would say also the feeling was it was presented as a united front, that the whole city council agreed with the motion, and that's not what actually happened.
No, Michelle Tanner was the one who was willing to stand up and say this is wrong.
Greg MacArthur also said that he didn't agree with that on the podcast as well. So, knowing for sure, because those are the only two I think I talked to about it, knowing for sure that there wasn't necessarily consensus about that, I think there's definitely communication breakdowns that are happening. Mm-hmm. How do we aside from, because I don't necessarily think just like having a open-ended public commenting period happen every single month. I don't necessarily think that that's like the perfect outlet, because I think it's actually kind of a poor outlet of doing it and shutting that down. But opening up another venue or another opportunity to do that, I think it'd be a different idea.
One of the ideas I've heard banded around is doing town halls. I think it's a fantastic idea. So it's less formalized. You still have to get in a speaking order and have mm-hmm. a certain amount of time, so you're not there till midnight. But an opportunity to have real conversations between the citizens and the administration. Yeah,
having town halls, being able to get face-to-face with people and have those conversations.
But part of that is there are issues that really affect certain people in a very vigorous way. Mm-hmm. And like I when I was out canvassing, I met with someone who used to work for the ACLU here and didn't agree with some of the verbiage on my handouts. Mm-hmm. And she was very, very aggressive with what that triggered her. I finally got her to sit down, and it took a while to really get her to open up and start having a real conversation. We talked for 45 minutes and realized that we agreed on probably 92-95% of what I was running on. She still didn't like how that was phrased on my, mm-hmm. and I gave her that. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'll accept that. But when we're willing to
have the conversation,
I mean, you can still be passionate, mm-hmm. but if your passion superimposes your ability to listen mm-hmm. on both sides, you can't have a real conversation. Mm-hmm. It's why I hate debates. Debates aren't about who's right or wrong. Debates are about who's a better debater.
Yeah.
conversations. That's where we actually move forward. That's where we learn to have a consensus. That's where we find a middle ground that works for everybody.
Well, I think I know who you're talking about because you said Desert Canyons and canvassing, and I know exactly the ACLU member out there. So shout out because I know she's listening.
It was a wonderful conversation, and I thanked her sincerely several times at the end of it for being willing to have it.
Yeah, and she is passionate. She is passionate about the things she cares about, and that's part of that is the right of Americans to be able to be passionate about something, and we don't necessarily have to. We shouldn't all be agreeing on everything because that's a problem. And that brings me to a transition though point is like, how are you differentiating yourself from a lot of the candidates that are there? Because there's 3 seats open, but when it comes to we start talking about numbers, there's a lot of the same thing kicked from person to person. What's separating you from everyone else? I want what's the
one of the real interesting points here is I'm not a land developer. I'm not a realtor.
Yeah,
I can't make money and I'm not saying realtors are. I have a lot of friends that are realtors that I have a lot of.
There's a lot of horrible realtors. I'm going to be honest. I'll be the first one to tell you. There's 2,000 in Washington County. There's one in 8 humans. 1 in 8 humans. That's including children. 1 in 8 humans has a real estate license. You can get it for free. You can legitimately get your real estate license for free and do a horrible job right out of the gate and go make money doing this. However, it's a tough business.
Well, honestly, you unless you're in a really great mentorship program, which there aren't many, you are going to do a horrible job right out of the gate until you learn how to do it.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, right, when it all boils down to it, you're right. Is they have horrible reputations. I heard on the radio today that there are realtors cold calling and canvassing the citizens that own property in Maui. Mm-hmm. Already, they're calling, asking if they want, giving offers to buy the land that's been scorched. They haven't even found.
The government's contemplating putting a freeze on any of that, and it's like, quit contemplating it. Put a freeze on it and threaten them with jail time.
Yeah. So like I heard that and I'm like, this is what people hate realtors.
They're still searching for bodies.
This is why I get doors slammed in my face and people, hang up when I've called about something that may have nothing to do with wanting to sell their house, but to just open up conversations. Right. So I get the stigma because there's basis to it. However,
flip side to that, I have met and worked with realtors, not just ones that have, the guy who sold my house to help me get the house, love him to death. He happened to be the best friend of
Give him a shout out.
Rob. Oh my gosh.
That's okay.
Wilkins. No, not Wilkins. Oh, I'm so bad with names. I'll have to look it up the last name, but the first name's Rob. Best friend from my wife's sister's new husband.
Yeah. That's how it goes too. But, you got a great realtor.
Great realtor that came in and showed us exactly what we needed to do to make the house presentable, and just went above and beyond. And absolutely adore him and his wife. They did a fantastic job.
Yeah.
I used to work with when I was doing IT support in the 2000s. I've worked in just about every realty office in St. George.
Nice. Okay.
When ERA built their building down a river, I wired the one up in Hurricane and helped put the voice system on interconnect.
Yeah. Cool.
Done work at NAI, and I used to do work at Steve Lemon's house.
But at the end of the day, like to your point, it's a slippery slope between government and those development and realtor.
The danger is you've seen a lot of realtors get on city councils, not just St. George, all over the U.S., and adjust codes and make decisions, especially with zoning and whatnot, that they know will benefit themselves. And one of the things that I will push for on any council member, if there's any chance that any council member will benefit financially from a vote that they're making, I'm going to demand, and this includes of myself, though I don't, wherever that happens to be, I will demand they recuse themselves from the vote.
Yeah. And I think that's a rule too. I think that should be an obvious one, right? There's been some examples where that's happened in the past. Leeds is the one that jumps into my mind already. However, when those things are fresh in your mind, I think that's a good differentiator. Is that you don't have a plug into that industry. Well, what do you do right now? So just in case, what would you have to recuse yourself from?
I'm a software engineer.
Okay.
And a network administrator. Before that, I was in theater, as indicated, and I've done theme park work. I don't know if you've been here long enough. Do you remember Pirate Island Pizza? It was over on Sunset Corner. I
remember hearing of it, but I don't think I
designed all their lighting, all their sound, the show control. They had a cannon fight I invented.
Nice,
stuff like that. And
rest in peace to businesses that have left us.
The people that were involved with that have been trying to build this water park that the current administration hates.
Oh yeah, the one over there off by Middleton.
Yep. And if there's any votes that come up involving that development, and I'm on city council, I even told the people there when I was going to run that if there's any votes regarding this, I will recuse myself.
Yeah.
I have to do what I demand of everybody else.
Yeah.
I have to be accountable. It's the same thing when I go out canvassing. I'm a big believer in the Constitution. That includes private property rights. You have a no soliciting sign on your door, I'm not knocking. I'm moving on. So unfortunately, why I stopped myself once I found out about the blanket no soliciting in Sun River. I got 4 doors in, a wonderful woman listened to spiel and said, okay, just so you know, there is a blanket no soliciting.
Yep.
Someone may say it, but please keep going. But I couldn't.
Yeah. And at the same time, as a real estate agent, I know that one well. I can tell you where you're not allowed to knock. I know all those. I know all those places.
I'm discovering a lot of.
Don't go to Paradise Canyon.
A lot of apartment complexes and townhouse complexes that also have those blanket.
Yeah, and so it's and this is the funny thing that we struggle with is that we put these things in place and then we have a hard time communicating to the elected officials, right? And when people want to avoid politics, I'm trying to put this voter information booth up and I get shut down left and right, man. Like I can't set up any city, the city itself can't facilitate its own election because I can't set up a voter information booth that is just about registrations. They can go to votestg.com and tell them verbally there's not anything on my table about that, right? So it'd be in a conversation. But the whole goal is to get us people out and registered to vote. I can't do that at the parks. It's against the events.
And it comes down because of what's happened legally across the U.S. with people abusing that and lawsuits that have come out because of it.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, you're saying I'm directing them to where they go of the facilitating.
I'm not saying that it should. The conversation shouldn't occur.
Agreed.
To change that and have very good requirements about it not being pro one candidate or another. Just information. I could get behind that yesterday.
Yeah, and I've talked to all the city council members. They can all too. But when you get into you actually go to submit your request to do it, it just lands into, it just falls on the floor because it's against this,
and it falls back into the codes that need to be revised and looked at.
Yeah, because they put a complete moratorium on any special events, and it's considered a special event.
No. They've put a moratorium on any special event not linked to the city already, and not on the books.
Correct. Fair enough. Thank you for that correction. Because if it was already on the books, then they're exempt from it. But anything new, and this would be a new thing because it was after the fact. However, this is what facilitates some of the problems that we have right now, and being able to not communicate, which is why it comes back to this podcast, and hopefully people keep engaging with it. I know we're wrapped out of time. We started a little bit late. What should we leave everybody with? What do you want to leave them with? What message do you want to leave them with?
I'm for personal freedom.
Yeah.
Gives people back the right to be who they're going to be, especially businesses. St. George City's got to get out of the way and let business start being created. We should be following the examples of Washington City. Twice now, they've been nationally recognized as the best place to create a new business. You go to the city website on building a new business, the first line and the last line is about getting permission from zoning and planning. Get the city out of the way. Yeah.
Yeah, they do a good job. I've specifically worked with Washington City on developments and business ideas and things like that, and they've been so helpful. So I would agree. And I've heard the exact opposite of St. George, and so I totally agree. I think that's great.
I'm sorry, but it falls back in line with the Goodelboy Club where they're all for supporting certain families creating businesses.
Yeah.
Get out of the way. Make it an even playing field.
What else?
And obviously the budget, I'm really hammering on that because the fact is the budget has grown so much faster than the population base. And mind you, part of that is because of the money they automatically get because of the increase of home values. But if we don't get control of that budget, we have to go to higher taxes. And I'm trying everything I can do to keep that. And increased fees are higher taxes. Any funds the city brings in, other than when they're acting as a business entity, is a tax.
Yeah.
So our taxes are going up already. We got to start looking very hard at the budget. I'd like to see us, I asked them, what kind of emergency funds do we have in city council? They said, well, we have 60 to 90 days. That's not an emergency fund. What I'd like to see is the city follow what the state's done, where it creates a fund that eventually gets to 10% of the general budget. A certain amount goes in per year. Once it hits that cap for that year, the rest goes back to the general funds that no one can touch without a vote from the city council. Yeah. So we have a real actionable emergency fund for when the next pandemic hits, for when the next disaster hits. We're ready for it.
Yeah.
Being proactive on these things.
We got to get ready for it. I agree with you there. Thanks for coming on the show, dude. Good luck. The ballots are in the mail, so you got 3 choices. Yeah. There's 3 choices.
Ironically enough, I've just my life has always gone this way, where I just kind of fall through the cracks. But
no, I think you're gonna do well, man. I wish you the best of luck. We'll find out, September 5th is the last day that they can get their ballots in, but they should have their ballots in the mail already. So they got to.
My friends several people texted me, showing me a picture of it. And
nice. Cool.
Of course,
good to see.
So who do I vote for?
Yeah. You're like, I wonder.
And I can't vote for me 3 times. So
exactly. Right. But you can vote for 3. This is the other thing. A lot of people are like, I didn't even realize there's 3 seats.
I vote for myself and 2 others.
Okay, well, way to go. Do you want to share who you voted for?
I haven't voted yet.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Because I really don't agree with the mail-in balloting system we have now.
Yep, you're going day of.
I'm going day of.
You're going day of. Well, hey, best of luck to you. If you make it through the primaries, when you make it through the primaries, hope to have you back. If we could talk a little bit longer.
I would absolutely love to come back anytime. And if I don't, if you want to just have a chat, I would enjoy that too.
Sweet, man.
Obviously, I like to try and keep up on things both locally and internationally.
Yeah, keep me up to date on stuff. That would be helpful, man. I appreciate it.
I want to add one last thing. If you can edit in it or not, it's at your choice.
Let's see.
I screwed up one area. I wasn't paying attention to the calendar and totally missed getting my stuff submitted to the state website. So I don't have any info up there.
You don't have any? Oh, that's all right. That's okay. No big deal. So you got to just find your stuff on your website, right?
My website and stuff like your website and links to the city.
Okay, cool. Perfect. Thanks. Okay, guys. Enjoy, guys. See ya.